It's a question a lot of us have probably asked at some point. Why do some people seem to pull away from love, even when it looks like a good thing? It's a real puzzle, right? And the answer is almost never simple. So today, let's really dive into the psychology behind this pretty complex human behavior.
I mean, we've all been there, or at least we've seen it happen. You meet someone, the connection feels real, things are going great, and then, bam, a wall just goes up. So in this explainer, we're going to try and figure out what is that wall actually made of, and maybe more importantly, why was it even built in the first place?
And it's so easy to just slap a label on it, isn't it? Oh, they're just a commitment phobe. But the reality is so much more nuanced than that. What we're going to see is that this kind of avoidance usually follows one of two very different psychological pathways. And getting to know them, well, that's the key to really understanding what's going on.
Okay, so here they are. These are the two big ideas at the heart of this whole thing. On one side, you've got this idea of a protective shield. Think of it as a defense mechanism, built to keep potential pain away. But on the other side, you have the path of autonomy, which is a totally different thing. It's a conscious choice to prioritize independence. Let's start by digging into that first path.
So this first pathway, it's all about self-protection. Pure and simple. It's not really about rejecting a specific person, It's more about rejecting the potential for pain that, from this perspective, relationships almost inevitably bring.
One of the biggest explanations for this, and one that's been researched a ton, is what psychologists call an avoidant attachment style. So what on earth does that actually mean? Well, think of it as a pattern that often starts way back in childhood, where someone learns that getting emotionally close to people just feels, overwhelming or unsafe. It feels more threatening than it does comforting, and that becomes this deep-seated, almost instinctual need to just keep a safe distance.
And if you think about what builds that shield, it's made of some really powerful stuff. There's this profound fear of being truly seen. That fear of letting someone see the real you and then facing rejection. Then, of course, there's the scar tissue from past heartbreak or betrayal, and sometimes it's even deeper wounds like emotional neglect or unresolved trauma, where the very idea of closeness just feels fundamentally unsafe.
And this really gets at how much our earliest models for love can shape our future. Just imagine for a second, if your main example of a relationship growing up was just full of constant conflict, or maybe just emotionally cold, your brain, without you even realizing it, learns a very powerful lesson. Relationships equal stress. So avoiding them starts to feel like a completely logical survival strategy.
This is where it gets tricky, because a belief like this can become a total self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When you're convinced that love is just doomed to fail, you might subconsciously start to sabotage connections almost to prove yourself right, and that just reinforces the belief and makes that protective shield a little bit stronger each time.
Okay, but that's just one side of the coin. It's really important to remember that not all avoidance comes from a place of fear or past pain. So let's shift gears and look at a completely different picture, because sometimes it's a deliberate choice.
Yeah, for people on this path, autonomy isn't a coping mechanism, it's a core value. Think about it this way. They aren't running from something, like pain. They're actually running towards something else, like personal goals, creative pursuits, or just a deeply held sense of who they are. So, why would someone consciously choose this path? It's a really good question, and it's just as valid and complex as the first one. I mean, they might have these intense career ambitions or a creative calling that requires their full, undivided attention. They may feel that relationships demand compromises to their time, their energy, their values that they just aren't willing to make right now. Or they might just place a really high value on self-sufficiency and the freedom that comes with it. For people on this path, a relationship isn't some missing piece to be found. It's an optional extra that they may not want or need to feel whole.
This next part is honestly, it's absolutely critical because it is so easy to misunderstand these behaviors. We need to be crystal clear about what psychological avoidance is and what it is not. Right, so let's break it down. Psychological avoidance, our protective shield, is a defense mechanism born from pain or fear. That is completely different from someone identifying as, say, aromantic or asexual, which are valid orientations. It's also totally distinct from someone who simply doesn't want a relationship right now because they're focused on healing or personal growth or their career. One is a reaction, the others are valid choices and identities. So bringing all this together, the real goal here isn't to diagnose or judge people, not at all. It's to shift our perspective, to move away from those simplistic labels and toward a more compassionate understanding of all the complex reasons behind someone's choices. All right, so let's quickly recap the key takeaways. First,
Some people use avoidance as a protective shield against pain. Second, others follow a path of autonomy, actively choosing independence. And third, and this is the most important one, avoiding a relationship isn't always a problem that needs to be fixed. Understanding the difference between a defense and a choice is absolutely essential.
And that leads us to a final thought to leave you with. Armed with this understanding of the two different pathways, how does it change the way you interpret this behavior? Whether it's in someone you know, or perhaps even when you recognize it in yourself.